I'd also like you to, our next stop really, I'd like to introduce you to one of the co-founders of CMG, and Toyin Ogunwale, as she's going to briefly talk about CMG and the panel discussions or the panel objectives for our discussions today. Toyin?
Okay, let me add myself to the spotlight. So sorry. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. My name is Toyin Ogunwale, and here is the agenda for our event for today. Julian Roberts has already done the welcoming introduction. I'm going to share the objective of this panel discussion, and then let you know a little bit about what we are on about. So he has also talked about the tech issues. If they do occur, please feel free to join back with the Zoom link or the YouTube that you're watching from. And then about the Canadian Multicultural Group. So this is a group that we started in 2018. We started as a LinkedIn group, and it's just a social platform where we want everyone to connect, and we'll be able to create an environment for people to feel involved, respected, valued, and confident to share career and business opportunities with one another. Our main goal is to promote diversity and inclusion, identify and celebrate skillful and resourceful individuals living here in Canada. So the panel objective, so why are we here today? We are here because of the Black History Month, and it is about honoring the enormous contributions of Black people, Black people that have made and continue to make in all sectors in Canada. So the main objective why we have put together this session is to discuss about the future. The theme is the future is now. So how do we define ourselves? How do we prepare ourselves for the future? If the future is now, do we have the skill, the competencies, have we been able to equip ourselves, through resilience, innovation, determination to work towards a more inclusive and diverse Canada where everyone has the opportunity to grow and flourish. Thank you so much for joining us today. Then I will need to pass the mic back to Julian. Julian, over to you.
Thanks, Toyin. Yeah, so I would like to introduce you all to our esteemed speakers for today, and we'll be starting with Dr. Juliet Daniels. Dr. Juliet Daniels is a professor and cancer biologist and interim associate. Pride in providing effective and practical legal advice in a thorough and timely manner through responsive communication with his clients. It helps his clients also achieve a resolution to their matters in a swift, cost-effective, and thoughtful manner through negotiation, mediation, as well as litigation. Please all join me in welcoming our panelists for today. Now, to our panelists, I would like to start with what your journey has been, how it has, how it has been for you, particularly that we have three very significant industries. We have the health sector represented, we have the financial systems, and then we have the legal industry also represented in here in our panelists. So the question is, and I would like to start with Dr. Juliet Daniels. How has it been for you? I mean, what were the decisions you took in embarking on this career path in Canada? How has it been as a Black professional? And what are the lessons you can share with everyone today? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me to participate on this panel today. And thanks for all of you who are giving up some of your Saturday afternoon to join into this panel. So my journey to becoming a research scientist, I think, started as a child. I was always curious. I was that child that always asked why, why are some flowers yellow? Why are some red? So I was that child that was fascinated by nature and trying to understand how, you know, each animal was different, and somehow every, you know, animal originated from just a sperm and an egg. So, you know, when I finished high school, I should say, I was always very good at science. But I must admit, I had a situation in high school where my creativity and interpretation of Shakespeare was not valued by my teacher. And that pretty much kind of steered me into science, where I felt like 1 + 1 will always be 2 and E will always be MC squared. So when, you know, that happened and she wasn't appreciating my creativity and interpretation of Shakespeare, I thought, let me just stick to the facts and what, you know, no one can dispute based on my race or my class. I grew up in Barbados, but I went to the top girls' school, but I came from a low-income family. So there was some classism that was definitely happening and rampant at the school at the time. So when I came to university, I knew I wanted to do research. I wanted to do research that would have a global impact. And with my childlike dreams, I wanted to get a Nobel Prize for that research. I had no idea how any of those things were going to happen, but that was my teenage dream. But my family, being the first person in my family to go to university, they all wanted me to become a physician. But I really wasn't that keen on being a physician. And especially after my mom and my next door neighbor both died of cancer during the last year of my undergraduate degree, the thought of going into a hospital and having to tell patients that, you know, bad diagnosis, and I just couldn't see myself doing that. And I felt that research would be a better avenue for me, because then at least I am developing the drug that hopefully will save lives in the future. So that was pretty much how I got to where I am. I didn't really think about race or being Black per se in science until I finished my PhD at UBC and I moved to Tennessee, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for my postdoctoral fellowship. And my first 10 days there was when I had that really rude awakening that I was Black. I couldn't open a bank account. I couldn't get my driver's license, and I couldn't get my social security number. And it was this vicious circle where each one said you needed a bank account. And then the bank would say, well, you need a driver's license for ID. It was just horrible. And after 10 days, I basically went back to the bank and cried, because I figured that was the easiest barrier to break down. And you know, they said, okay, calm down. Why are you moving to Memphis? Like, why would anyone in their right mind move to Memphis, I guess? And I said, well, I'm moving to work at St. Jude. And immediately her demeanor changed. And she's like, oh, well, are you a doctor or something? And once she realized I had a PhD and I was going to be working there doing research, everything changed and I got the red carpet treatment. And that was the first time that I literally was like, wow, you treat people differently just because of where they work. And clearly because I was Black as well, we would never, like in Canada, you open a bank account. It doesn't matter where you work or what you look like. So that was my first eye opener, I would say, about being Black. I just had not thought about it much prior to that in grad school. So, and then I can talk a lot longer, but we can let others talk. And then I'm sure Julian will have some follow-up questions for me, or people in the audience will have questions. Yeah, so that's where I got to where I am today. And it hasn't been without struggles, without, you know, discrimination and microaggressions. So it's been a journey, but I think of it as an adventure, actually. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that with us, Dr. Danielle. I mean, that's very inspiring and it's good to know. Thank you. I'll move over to Charles. Charles, how has it been in the legal profession? I mean, what has been your journey?
Thank you, Lushola. I came to Canada in 2011. Before then, I had practiced law in Nigeria for barely 6 months. I was born in a family of 10. I'm the 7th child, and all of my older ones were all into sciences, right? So out of youthful rebellion, I decided to get into something else. The reality is, by the time I was born, my immediate older sister was already 11 years old. So my oldest brother was already 25. So there's that massive gap between myself and my older siblings. The good thing with that is I had a lot of role models. I had a lot of people to look up to. I knew I had to get it right because I had no other choice. The bad thing was they already had expectations set for me. They wanted me to get into sciences and be a doctor and all of that. But unfortunately for me, I struggle with numbers. I struggle with, well, Dr. Daniel says 1 + 1 = 2. But to me, I have to think that twice before I get to that conclusion. Right. So I struggle with numbers, and I didn't have that tribal support, so to speak, to get into something other than sciences. But that was fire in my belly, in the sense that I knew that I had to make it right. I knew I had to justify the decision to rebel and go outside of the norm or outside of the tradition in the family. And when I came here in 2011, of course, the very first challenge for me was to survive. I had to find a place to stay, even though I had, siblings here already. Back in Nigeria, you could live with your siblings for 5, 6, 7 years and nobody would complain. But here, if it goes beyond 2 months, then they start giving you a face, right? I had to challenge, survival. I had to find a place to stay. I had to do all kinds of survival work. I worked in warehouses, factory work, all of it, you name it. But I had a goal. My goal was to hustle back to back for about 6 months and then challenge the qualification exams as a lawyer. My story, my survival story isn't going to be different from so many immigrants out there. I remember, telling people that I was a lawyer and they said, "Get out of here, Charles. What are you talking about?" And I remember sleeping only 2 times a week. We all know what that is. But not knowing that I was building capacity for this. I was building capacity, I was building resiliency, I was building the ability to challenge whatever came my way. So ultimately, I joined this office that I own now as a student in 2013/2014, became a lawyer. About 2 years later, I became a manager, one of the partners here. And then 3 years into my call to the bar, the opportunity to buy the firm came about, right? At that point, I was 27, 28. I was young. I didn't have the professional network I needed to run a busy practice of, many lawyers. So everything in me refused that opportunity. In fact, I ran to my mentor to tell him how this opportunity had come about, and I was looking for him to say, "No, don't do it, Charles. This is crazy. You're just going to leap into the dark." To the contrary, my mentor thought the opportunity was a good one. My older siblings thought it was a good one. A few people in my life thought the opportunity was a good one, and my mindset changed right away. I was like, you know what, I might give this a shot. So I took over the practice. And mind you, the mindset then was, remember, 2 or 3 years before, I was making $14, $15 an hour. And all of a sudden, this opportunity came about where I would be responsible for so many lawyers. I'll be carrying over $50,000 of overhead in a month. So I couldn't really process it. But the people in my life, the people that could see the future, and the people that knew what I could do, people that believed in me more than I believe in myself, could say it. And I deferred to them. And they told me to take the leap. At the point, it was just my partner, Mr. Smith, was the only lawyer in the firm then. So I took over the firm, and fast forward 2.5 years later, we have 10 lawyers in the firm now, and I'm looking at setting up a few other branches in the country. But the challenge remains, right? The challenges remain. 2 days ago, I was consulting with a senior VP of an oil and gas that was terminated by the company. And the first question he asked me was, "Charles, why should I hire you? Why should I trust your advice? Why should I have confidence in you?" And I was very odd because this person had already paid for the consultation. This person has really checked me out on the internet and looked out for our reputation online, but still wasn't convinced. I don't know what it was, my accent, whatever it was, but he needed me to sell myself. And I told him to give me 15 minutes. And he did. At 15 minutes, went from 15 minutes, 30 minutes, then to 1 hour, an hour and a half. And ended up being a client. But so my point is the hurdles are still there, and I think we're going to speak to it as we progress in the conversation. And I will also share some of the tips as to how I've been able to overcome this hurdle. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Charles. I hear a lot of resilience in there. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Mel, how's your journey been in the finance world?
My journey, unlike I guess the other panelists, I feel like they have such really great stories of how they landed in their careers. Mine kind of just happened that I sort of stumbled into the career that I have. So when I went to, growing up, I'm South African. So I think like all Africans, as a kid, so what are you going to be when you grow up, right? It's doctor, lawyer, and civil engineer was big in South Africa. I was terrible at sciences, so I knew I was going to do that. The other option was chartered accounting. I found accounting terribly boring. So I knew I wasn't going to do that. And I couldn't be a lawyer because I didn't like to read a lot. So I ended up doing a Bachelor of Business Information Systems, which I kind of felt was like a hybrid. You're solving problems, but you don't have to be too mathematical. And so that sort of was what I graduated with in South Africa. And then I immigrated to Canada. I immigrated to Winnipeg, and, that was 11 years ago. I think right now, a lot of the immigrants have, it's still not an easy path to get into a career in Canada, but I feel like for those who may be listening, feel positive about the fact that companies are doing a lot more to try to integrate you guys and create avenues for you to transition. I didn't have that. I also, being in Winnipeg, there was no tech industry, so I couldn't get into a tech job. And so I ended up getting a job at a call center for fintech that was called Mogo. And so that sort of got me into the role that I am now, where I started in a call center, transitioned to the accounting department, managing their payments and transactions. So managing a lot of payment products like EFTs, wires, that type of thing, funding, liquidities, that type of thing. And so that then helped me get a job at CIBC, where I worked in commercial banking as a cash management sales associate, supporting the mid-market team in Edmonton and the Northwest Territories. And so that was selling payment liquidity products to mid to large size businesses that had, a loan facility of $5 million or more. And so it's helping those businesses understand that it's great that you have a good loan. It's great that you have a great company, but you need to understand how to manage your cash flow, your payments and receivables, and how do you invest for the future. I did that for about 3 years before I transitioned to a role in product management in Toronto. So moved again for the third time. And in that role is where I actually managed a lot of products. I actually launched CIBC's first true commercial credit card. And that has now landed me into the role I am at People's, where I work in payments modernization. So I'm more on the policy side of Payments Canada and the Department of Financing, upgrading all of the infrastructure that our payments are on, and how you as a consumer move sort of your money around. So if you think about all the cool technology, those who may be into it, think about open banking, and how cool would it be if you could, think of, I want a product, and on your screen pops up all of the the pricing for all the banks and all companies and that type of thing. So how do we create sort of an ecosystem that gets us there? And so my job is to go to these meetings with representatives from other banks and represent sort of our organization to say, what do we think about the rules, the standards, the policies that are being enacted? And so I've not had sort of a real strategy around my career. It just happened to be that I got a job, got a little bit bored after like 3 years, and I was like, oh, okay, that's something new. Okay, let me go on to this. And I just sort of fell into place with my career.
Wow, thank you, Mel. I mean, I think that resonates with quite a number of us, in that, you plan for something and then you find yourself in another spot and then you love it. Yeah. Julian, you have some follow-up questions?
Hi, thank you. Yes. Wow. I thank you for sharing that with us. That was fascinating. Just hearing the experiences you've had to move so far, and hearing it from you, and and the perspective that you were able to share on that. Thank you for sharing that. I did have 3 follow-up questions, and I'll just go in order. But Dr. Daniel, as a researcher, once you had arrived, in higher education, and you were actually performing, how important, or could you please just talk about, how important it was, that blend of, job satisfaction and your professional social experience, and how important those two factors were in keeping you engaged and committed to advancing in that industry?
So I don't know how many academics are online listening, but for any professor that starts off in academia, the first 3 to 4 years of your career, at least, definitely for me, I wasn't thinking about anything other than I need to get my lab set up. I need to write grants and get funding. I need to publish manuscripts, because in year 5, my entire dossier gets assessed to see whether I'm worthy to be kept as a professor at the university. So to be honest, I had the first 5 years, all I was focused on was getting my research lab, hiring students and trainees, getting funding to do the research, and getting those publications out, because that at the time was pretty much what was everyone focused on. Granted, I was definitely experiencing the odd racism here and there, but I kind of brushed it off or ignored it, because I had my eye on that one crucial thing that I knew that was the last hurdle that had to be jumped to achieve tenure, which gives you that job stability and security as an academic professor or researcher. So I started getting engaged in EDI work, I think in 2004, 2005. So this was a couple of years before that big tenure process. And, that's when I started realizing that I was the only Black female professor at the university. Again, up until then, I hadn't noticed, because I was just so focused on doing my work, getting those grants, getting those papers. And so it's like, oh, wait a minute. There were a couple of Black male professors, but there were no other Black female professors. And that was the case up until 2008, 2009. I was the only Black female professor. And to date, I am still the only Black female scientist at the university. So there are over 900 professors, and I'm the only Black female scientist at the university. We now have, about 2 years ago, we doubled the number of Black female professors from 2 to 5. And we were like, yay, we've doubled. But that's pretty pathetic, right? But we were pretty excited. But I'm still the only one that's a scientist. So, I definitely was experiencing the racism. Anytime I got an award, there would be snarky comments about, oh, yeah, I guess you got that because you're Black, or if I would even have lunch or anything with some of the other Black professors, colleagues would bump into me and see us going for lunch and say, oh, wow, are you guys plotting to take over the university? And I'm like, no, are you? You're going with all your friends and we don't ask you that. Like, what is that about? So there were always these like microaggressions and comments, and it was just, but again, my personality is the type that I don't let that kind of stuff faze me. And my personality, which again, one of those things now I reflect, it's like I've always been a problem solver. And so if I see a void or a gap in the university, my instinct is to come up with a solution to it. And I've been doing that, I think, since I was a postdoctoral fellow in the US. We saw there was no association for postdoctoral fellows. I helped to co-found one, so it was just this constant, I saw that, yes, we had only 7 or 8 Black professors. So in 2010, we co-founded the African Caribbean Faculty Association of McMaster. And we had a big launch at the university as if there were so many of us. But it was just, it was just 8 of us. But we had a big launch with the president of the university and a few of the senior leaders, So whenever, for me, when I see a need, I personally just try to solve that, fill that need, and don't harp on the fact that, this isn't happening. I just go into full gear and do something about it.
Well, thank you. So, but thank you for sticking it out, because believe it or not, you are a role model. And that does show that, perseverance and focusing on the task at hand can lead to success and open the path for others. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, and so thank you. Charles, I had a follow-up question for you as well. Just, growing up in a big family, you need to be, resilient, because siblings, and they do have expectations. I have some older siblings myself, but there's only 4 of us. But still, I wanted you to touch on that, building resiliency, and especially that need that you touched on, to constantly have to reestablish your bona fides. Do you think that discourages others from following in, or from progressing along a certain path? Or do you think it challenges you to say, no, I really can do it?
Right, absolutely. I think it's the latter. I think it's that unquenchable fire that keeps burning at all times. For you to be successful and remain successful, you need to have a very big why. You need to have a very big purpose. You need to have a very big reason for what you're doing. And right from childhood, I'd seen my siblings. Um, you know, Dr. Daniel reminds me of my family. I have
Nice.
others have like two PhDs and these has
Yeah.
four masters and all that. They're all academics,
Wow. Yeah.
right? So growing up, seeing all of that, it was daunting, right? It was daunting, and but again, to me, it was a good thing because I couldn't have stayed apart. I remember living with one of my brothers. He's a Catholic priest, actually. I started living with him as young as 7. He raised me like he was military. Okay,
Oh,
as young as 7, he only gave me two choices. I was either sleeping or I was reading. There was no cartoon. There was no. I remember someday he caught me
wow.
watching. I think it was Atlanta. No, not Atlanta. France '98, the World Cup. He caught me watching the finals, and he punished me for like 3 hours for doing that.
Oh no, that was the one with the Zidane headbutt, I believe.
That one.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was supposed to be reading my books,
Yeah.
not watching the soccer, right?
Oh no.
So as young as 7, he ingrained in me the ethics and the work ethics, the focus and discipline,
Yeah.
you know. And of course, I hated him at a point, right?
That's perfectly understandable.
I despised him. But guess what, Julian? This is what is keeping me going.
Yeah.
This is
You're right.
how I'm able to set a target, and I don't go to bed until I meet that target, right?
Nice.
This is how I'm able to manage a practice of 15 employees, 10 lawyers, without really having grown up here, without really having that tribal professional network, right? Like
Yeah.
hustling every day. And to me, working 6 days a week, 7 days a week, some people look at me from a distance and ask me, how do I do it? And I ask them, how do I do what? I don't even know what I'm doing.
You're
Because for me,
focused.
it's nothing. This is okay. This is normal. This is not abnormal for me, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
family orientation, looking up to my siblings and all of that, that is actually a good thing. It was a healthy phenomenon for me,
nice. Thank you. So the drive, the focus.
right?
I respect that. And just that passion to always see, that achievement, what's next and can I do it? I love that. That is inspiring. That is, a really good example for the rest of us.
Thank you.
And Meryl, I did have a follow-up question for you, and I was hoping to just, to talk to you. You really, you came, just from your explanation, you always come across as very savvy, being able to spot opportunities. But I wanted to talk to you about that, having that instinct. Were you ever skeptical of, these there, because as you mentioned, there are a lot more diversity initiatives now. And were you ever skeptical of those diversity initiatives? And if so, how did you get past that? I was hoping to hear a little bit from you about that.
Yeah, I think, last year when we saw, the George Floyd and all these companies came out and they put out these major statements about we're going to do all these great things. I think like every other Black person, and more so the older generation than even us, who've seen sort of these waves happen time and time and time again, regardless of what industry they're in. I think, we saw these great big promises and we're like, okay, that's great. You're giving like $100 million. You're setting targets. Okay, that's great. And I will say I was skeptical in the beginning. And it's nice to see now that we're almost a year later. It's in May will be pretty much a year later, and
Yeah,
we're still seeing
time
companies
flies.
really making an effort to put forth the right strategy. So we're seeing, things like the Black North Initiative. We've seen over, I think it's now, they're now at like 500 companies who signed this pledge to really increase their representation by 2025. So that's a beautiful thing. We're seeing that they're engaging in not just, okay, we're going to set money aside and give a big paycheck to charities. We're actually seeing them engage in things like the Black Entrepreneurship Initiative and committing to that. We're seeing that even the engagement COFPE gets from corporate partners is that they're really asking and they really want to learn. They realize that they don't have all the answers anymore. It's not like before where they would tap a diversity and inclusion consulting firm or there are people that work for them, because they realize what they've been trying in the past didn't work. So it is encouraging. It's made me less cynical. I mean, I'm still kind of like, okay, it's year one. Like, let's see. Once you hit 2025, 2026, are we still going to have the same energy or what's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? So I'm a little less cynical now. It's encouraging to see that. It makes me feel very hopeful as a young Black professional, especially in the finance industry. And what's great about it is it's showing the younger generation. I encourage them when you go for your interviews now, ask the questions about diversity. Ask them, because you guys are the ones that are showing them that the new generation is different. The expectation is different. And, our millennials, Gen Zs, we don't, it's a good and a bad thing. We don't work this out for 10, 20 years. Which, but that also means companies now have to compete a lot more because people are sort of like, I'm not happy. I'm gonna just go across the road to the next company, So it's making me hopeful. We're seeing things change, but it's a long journey. It's not gonna happen overnight. So we just all have to be patient with the process.
Marathon, not a sprint, but look for evidence. I like that. Thank you. Thank you. So those were the follow-up questions. I know I'm going to have more for the next segment. Shola, you're going to lead us into the next segment?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Julian. So before we go into the next segment, which is mainly talking about your transformational work, the message for this year, The Future Is Now, really celebrates the transformational work that, the Black professionals in Canadian have been doing and are still doing, and then we have to keep celebrating them. I have a question here in the chat box. Please keep posting your comments in the chat session, and then we will just take it as we go. So this question is for Dr. Daniel. The question says, I am a research technician at McMaster's University with a master's in molecular biology. I like to do a PhD and my interest is in cancer immunology. As an academia who has walked this path, what advice or recommendation can you give to me? Also, if you don't mind, I'd like to connect with you personally, as I would love to, as I would love for you to something like, mentor me and all of that. So yeah, Dr. Daniel.
Yeah, hello, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Bim. So yeah, definitely contact me. You can find my email contact online on the McMaster website. It's pretty easy. And I think since you already have a master's, you basically just need to find a researcher at any university, whether it be McMaster or any other university in Canada, that's doing the type of immunology research that you're passionate about. Because as you know already, having done your master's, that research is 99% failure. And so you have to have that really deep-seated desire to want that PhD and to want to solve the problem, so that you don't give up when you encounter all the failures that typically come along with doing a PhD. And also just make sure that you have friends that understand what it's like to be a graduate student and understand when you will have to say, no, I can't do this, or no, I can't go out, because you have to really focus to get that PhD done. So I always was surrounded by a lot of friends. Like UBC was fantastic. It was a very international university in the context of graduate students, because at the time that I went, it was one of the few universities in Canada that did not have a differential fee for international students. So consequently, I would say the majority of graduate students at UBC in the late 80s, early 90s were from every corner of the globe. So I had friends in chemistry, in physics, in zoology, in pharmacology, and engineering. And many of them, we've maintained friendships for the past 30 plus years because, you know, we all knew what it was like to be studying for those exams, to have experiments that didn't work, to be struggling and fighting with our supervisors about something. So my advice would be to find, first of all, a research topic that really, really excites you, and then make sure that when you do interview with that professor or researcher, that you also interview with the people that are currently in that lab to make sure that you're not going into the lion's den. Because some faculty members, just like any other employee, portray a very, very nice image during the interview, but then when you get to the workplace, it's absolutely miserable. So when I interview any trainee, I always send them or take them, now we can't do it physically, but I always take them to my lab so that they can talk with the people in my lab, because the interview isn't just about me interviewing you. You should be interviewing me as well to see whether you can work with me, whether we would be a good match for each other. So whatever you decide to do or whoever you decide to work with, that should be part of your strategy.
Thanks, Dr. Daniel. And in line with what you've just highlighted, you know, talking about transformational work, I mean, I read through your profile, I see a lot of, you know, groups that you founded, that you've co-founded. I see a lot of awards of excellence and all of that. One of which, the one that really caught my attention was the Women's, you know, Executive Network, Top 100 Most Powerful Women. I mean, that's no joke at all. What would you say the challenges? I mean, I know it's not been an easy stride along the way, you know, to get all this and then to get it not in just few numbers, but a lot of them. Now, as a Black professional, what would be your advice? And what can you share with us, given the experience you've had, having come to this stage up until now? What would be your advice for, you know, Black professionals just trying to ascend the ladder of their own career achievements?
So lots of different responses to that, but definitely you have to understand your particular profession, because I said every profession is different. In mine, those first 4 to 5 years are absolutely crucial, because that's just what you do, and every profession is different. And I remember kind of being upset that, you know, my friends that went to med school or law school, once they were finished their boards and they had their, you know, law practice or their family practice as a physician open, they were done with studying. But I resented those first 5 years that as a professor, I had to constantly justify my existence by writing grants and, you know, basically competing for money to do the research that I was hired to do. Like, that really, really bugged me, and it still kind of bugs me. But I think you have to first understand your own profession and then build a network of supporters and or allies in that profession. And it doesn't have to be at your university, and have a champion and or a mentor for you, other organizations in whatever profession you're in, because sometimes your biggest champions are going to be outside of your organization. And so I am a very outgoing person. And so I have friends all over the world, all over Canada. So I had lots and lots of people to call upon for advice. So I wasn't always like bugging the same person. And also that gave me multiple perspectives as well, because sometimes some people have very specific, narrow perspectives. And if you're only talking to those people all the time, you're missing out on the other perspectives, right? So I personally have had a very big network, partly because I genuinely want to know people. I want to get to know people, who they are, what makes them tick, what motivates them. And then that goes into friendships and mentorships, and it just, so, but that's just my approach. Others are more introverted. And I am a bit of an introvert. It's just that I just love meeting people. And so that was my motivation, I think, for actually getting to where I am. And a lot of it was just very organic. I didn't plan anything. So it was a little bit like Meryl that way, I guess. It was just more me being myself and just organically getting to know people, being authentic and genuine, which I think now that's the catchphrase, but I was doing that without knowing that that's what I was doing. I was always, you know, because people are always like, oh, you seem so down to earth for a professor. And I was like, well, why not? You know, but that was just who I am. And so I think everyone just has to find the path for themselves. There isn't any one correct path. Yeah.
Thank you. So I will thank you for that, Dr. Daniel. Talking about influence and, learning from other people, I actually had a question for Charles. I mean, Charles, one of your awards really stood out and struck me. You were named as one of the top 25 most influential lawyers in Canada. And I'm going to dwell on the word influence. And I want you to talk about just how important that was to you finding success in the legal sector. And of course, please do share some of that learning with us.
Absolutely. First of all, I don't know what they were thinking when they gave me the award, but
I'm sure they were thinking that you had reach, that you definitely had reach.
right, that is that's honest. Anyhow, I think I'm just gonna extrapolate from what Dr. Daniel talked about. I think she mentioned she referenced mentorship, right? Everybody keeps talking about mentorship, but it's one area that we cannot overemphasize, right? We cannot get tired of talking about it. Mentorship is everything. You know, when I came to this country, I remember the very first lawyer I spoke with, the very first time a lawyer recognized me as a lawyer and spoke to me as a lawyer. That was my first mentor in Canada. And that conversation changed my life. You know what I say? You don't remember the conversation you've had with someone, but you remember how the person made you feel? Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
that was
Yeah.
that was it for me. You know, I came here, I was running around warehouses, falling asleep on the train and
Wow.
sleeping only twice a week. And someone told me about this mentoring organization called CRIAC, and I should, go say hello to them. And I scheduled a meeting with the executive director. For the very first time, this person was talking to me peer to peer, and that relationship continued afterwards. So the mistake some of us make when we come here, one of the mistakes is that we tend to stick to our familiar circle, right? We want to hang
Don't
around the
expand the
people
group.
that speak like you, hang around people that have the same history, because it's very uncomfortable going beyond that circle and reaching out to other people, right? So I realized that, identified that, and I reached out to different organizations. I joined various organizations, and I started learning the culture and all of that. Then the relationship blossomed. Through him, I met so many other people, and then I started having a tribe of supporters, right? People that were there and have been there for me. That motivated me to incorporate mentorship in my practice. I was no longer the lawyer that was just looking out for themselves. I was now the lawyer that ensured that each year I had at least 2 or 3 students
Yes.
that I would mentor. Every year, I would have at least 2 lawyers that are called to the bar because I mentor them. And I have these other young lawyers in the firm. At that point, I realized that this is my purpose, helping others, because success is not just about yourself, it's about making a difference in people's lives. So being a positive influence on those coming after me has been incorporated into my DNA, into my business. And I think the magazine kind of picked up on that, given how, you know, the very short number of years of practice and how many lives I've touched in that period of time. And in reflection, this is actually the story of my success,
Yep.
having to walk on the shoulders of people that have come here before me and give me a hand.
You see, ladies and gentlemen, you build reach by building a tribe and making your tribe successful.
Right.
I love that. I love that. I took that note down. And no, speaking about success, Meryl, please, as the chair advisory board for the Canadian Association of Urban Financial Professionals, that's a significant achievement and responsibility, because one doesn't come without the other. So I wanted you to take a moment, please. But for, in your case, if you could please talk about the impact that your organization has had, because especially where it relates to improving outcomes, making your tribe successful, improving outcomes for other Black professionals? I'd really enjoy hearing from you about that.
Yeah, sure. So, as Charles mentioned, right? Don't just stick to your tribe, sort of branch out,
Grow it, tribe. Yeah.
grow it, get yourself a board of advisors. And that's really what COFBE is trying to enable for Black professionals in corporate Canada. So COFBE has been around since 1997. We've grown significantly over the years. I was president for the last 2 years. When I came on as president, we had 178 members. We're now at 899. So, we try to influence and provide Black professionals with access to thought leadership, and not just thought leadership. It's the ability for you to actually be able to network with the type of senior executives that you would never see in your everyday life, or that you may be too intimidated to reach out to. And these executives love it because they're extremely busy people. They're CEOs, EVPs, SVPs. They don't have a lot of free time. So for them to be able to come out, share their story, engage with young folks, and have a quick conversation is a big thing. And so it's even helped me. I joined COFBE as a member when I moved from Edmonton to Toronto, and it literally was just, hey, I wanted to network and make some friends. And like I said, like with my career, with everything, it's always been sort of, I've stumbled into things, and that's how I stumbled onto, okay, I'll volunteer, okay, I'll join the board, okay, I'll say yes to president, and now I'm on the chair. And the type of people that I have access to, if I send an email and they'll respond to it, is something I would have never had I not sort of been out there. It would have not happened had I not gone to an association like COFBE. And there are many others in various industries that you can network that taught me a lot. For example, I learned about the importance that if you're in the financial services industry, why it's important for us to get on boards, right? We see all these headlines about, oh, there's not representation in corporate boards, but how do you even get on a corporate board? Where do you start from? All of those things, and learning some of these, the political aspect of how you navigate yourself in those positions. All of these things I learned from COFBE, and that's the knowledge we want to share with people, so that as the generations come up one after the other, people are not having as hard a time as the last group of people. They have a support network. They have an understanding of how things work. They are exposed to more careers, because regardless, I think if you're Black, regardless if you're African, from the Caribbean, or even Canadian, like we said, we all learned, be doctor, lawyer, accountant, or, engineer, but we're not learning about the cool things that you can do if you decide you want to be a lawyer, right? Like, we had a guy at our youth summit talk about, he used to be a lawyer and he was interested in fintech, and now he does M&A for a lot of the big fintech deals you see in Canada for Faskins, which is one of the top law firms. And he talked to students about, how do you navigate that path? It doesn't have to be if you have a love for both, right? And the same thing, you look at, I don't know if folks know about Claudette McGowan and how she took her career working. She started at BMO and now she's at TD, but working in tech. She creates the Tech and Arts Festival where she merges the two, because she's like, hey, kids have a love for arts, but they also have a love for robotics. How do we melt that and create an opportunity for them to get jobs, for them to get access to, thought leadership? She's now launched a cybersecurity platform to teach Black people about the importance of cybersecurity at a time now when we're getting hacked more than ever. So
Everywhere.
it's, these are the kind of cool people that you don't hear about, especially in an era where 9 to 5 is no longer cool. Everybody wants to have a side hustle and be an influencer. So it's the hope is to get people exposed to these kind of people who are genuinely nice people, even though they're killing it in their careers, and just help you to get your mentors, your advisors, or if anything, hopefully that 30 minutes in front of them helps to change and shape your life and the choices you make in your career going forward. So that is, in a sense, what COFBE is and trying to do.
Beautiful. Thank you. I love you touched upon a key thing again that I've heard. It's a thread: exposure. Exposure to talent, exposure to experience, mentorship. You have to see what you want to become, and it makes it easier. I love that. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to hand over to Shola. Shola, you have a question for Dr. Daniel on transitions. And
yes, thanks. So we have a question from one of our attendees, and the question says, Dr. Daniel, how would you advise on how a Black professional can transit from an operational level to a more strategic level in, the professional world?
So Okay, so again, I did this. This was probably the most strategic thing I did in academia. So because I was really puzzled about how decisions were being made, I would say actually every professor was puzzled about how decisions were being made at McMaster University and in academia in general. And, you know, why would this faculty get funding and not that faculty? And how come they had 40 professors and we only had 20? So many of us were always curious about that. And because I built this big tribe on campus, you know, whenever we have or Senate or senators or elected officials at the university, or board of governors. So I strategically would put my name forward to be nominated. And so I did this. I was a senator first, and then quickly realized they don't have that much power. So then I asked around which committee has more power. And I just basically got nominated for the top 3 committees at the university, which is the Senate, the University Planning Committee, and the Board of Governors. So I was a senator first, and then a few years later, I got nominated to be on the University Planning Committee, and then, which is actually where a lot of the decisions about money are made, and who gets it and why. And then I had the fortunate or unfortunate pleasure of actually becoming the chair of the budget subcommittee of the University Planning Committee, which gave me quite a bit of power, but it was incredibly nerve-wracking because here I am in this giant boardroom and I'm at the head of this table and I'm the only Black person in the room of about 26 people. There's one other racialized person and I'm having to tell people, sorry, you can't get what you're asking for in your budget. Or I'm sorry, that budget submission doesn't cut it because you did not explain how you're going to address equity, diversity, and inclusivity in your approach for next year. Just saying that you're going to increase the numbers of Black students or Indigenous students does not tell me how you're going to integrate them, what you're going to do to ensure they succeed. So I honestly, every time I chaired that committee for 2 years, my heart was like racing in my chest because I could feel these eyes just staring at me. And I'm sure some of them were thinking, who does she think she is? You know, but so that was the one strategic thing I did because I wanted to understand how decisions were being made. And so I strategically got nominated for those positions. I mean, obviously there's no guarantee you're going to be selected, but I was, in part because, as I said, I had built quite a big network of friends on campus. Students, faculty, and staff, not just faculty. So I had many staff friends, many students that I was mentoring. And so I would say that depending on the organization you're in, again, you have to build a network, you have to build that tribe, and you have to be trustworthy and authentic so that people will think of you, they will nominate you when opportunities come up and because they know that you are genuine and you have the best interest of the organization at heart. So I think everyone knew that about me, that I genuinely cared about the success of the university. One personal coach actually told me once that I'm a very tribal person. If I'm at McMaster, I am 200% McMaster. But if I move to McGill, I am 200% McGill. So I am very tribal wherever I am. So I think that's just how I approached my transition up. And again, I saw the need for over a decade ago, I guess, I noticed that certain people were being tapped for leadership and coaching sessions on campus. And I was like, well, how come no one's tapping me or some of my friends? And so I saw that need, contacted a friend who did leadership training and, convinced and persuaded senior leadership that we needed a pilot project to assess leadership training just for female faculty members. And we got funding from the president of the university and all the faculty deans. And we did a pilot in gender leadership training just for female faculty. It was a huge success. And the university was planning to roll that out for all female faculty. And then of course, others joined in and said, well, what about our junior male faculty? And I'm thinking, okay, if you insist, but right. But the point was that the women just were not, a few women were being tapped and they were typically the white blonde haired women, but very few women were being tapped to attend leadership training at the university's expense. And so I saw that need and just launched a pilot to address that. So I think sometimes just taking initiative and demonstrating that you were doing it because you care about the institution as a whole, and it's not for yourself. Yeah.
Wow, thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. I think I hear a lot of volunteering. I hear a lot of being of good character.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of don't wait to be tapped, nominate yourself. And that's a very good strategy. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
And I have a follow-up question from Mel on this, saying, given your experience with the Canadian CAUFP, what would you say the representation of the Black professionals has been, in transiting from that operational level to a more strategic level?
I would say, in financial services, we still have a very, very, very long way to go. If you look at the top TSX 100, we don't even represent the population, right? You don't see 3.5% of the CEOs or executive leaders representing Black community. And that's kind of one of the reasons why Wes Hall has been so adamant about the Black North Initiative. So one of the things that COFP does is when we work with corporate partners, we have a talent portal where they can post jobs, and hopefully that'll draw more Black people into those roles, is we specifically ask them not to post roles that are very entry level operational, because most people aren't aware that a lot of the Black people that work at these big five banks work in roles like the call center, the check clearing systems, all of these back end operational jobs. And there's not a lot of them that are in revenue generating businesses, because that's how you get to the C-suite, is you have to manage a P&L. You have to either be sales focused or running a product or a department. And a lot of Black people aren't being sort of transitioned into those roles. And so the hope is that as they work with us to create those talent pipelines, as they post jobs, as they come to the Youth Summit to look for young Black talent, they're being strategic in putting them in those lines of businesses where they have a better upward trajectory and a shorter climb, as opposed to starting in the branch, in the call center, in the check clearing. They're now starting as an associate in capital markets, commercial banking. They're in the digital labs, all these hot places where they can really be groomed for leadership. Again, we're going to see the transition over a long time. They also now have the responsibility of not just hitting these targets that they've pledged to, but also to, Dr. Daniel's point is, what are you doing to transition them in and make it have true inclusion, have them feel valued at the job that they're at? How do you even change the culture of the old guard that's there today, especially in things like capital markets, investment banking, asset management, where it is, the older white man that runs that business. And those are also the clients that you're servicing a lot of the time. So the hope is eventually gets Black people into that strategic place. And we hope that we can continue to influence some of the decisions that are being made with regards to talent and recruitment strategies.
Oh, great. Thank you. I think I hear a lot of, there's a lot of opportunity in the financial sector, given all that you've described. And I think that's something for us to take, home, especially for people, participants today. Let's take action and, get into the spot. From what we've heard, let's transit from that operational level. It's not okay for us to dwell in there. How do we also proceed? We've heard their journeys, we've heard about their, the transformational work they're doing. And we've also heard some strategies in which they are currently adopting that they've used, to transit to these strategic level. Julian, would you mind taking over now?
Okay, thank you. I have heard, I'm really grateful for the lessons that you've been able to share with us today. Thank you. I do have one more follow-up question, just a bit. One of the key threads that I definitely heard a lot about was resilience, hanging in there with a plan. And Charles, I'm going to direct this is going to be the final question for this segment, but I'd like you to please just talk about some of the keys to success in these major transitions, moving from the operational level to the strategic level, where you actually can use that influence to shape the future. I'd like you to please just share with us some of the thoughts that you had on that.
Absolutely, Julian. Well, some of the tips I'm going to share, wouldn't necessarily only apply to lawyers, wouldn't apply to doctors, wouldn't apply to professors. This would cut across all industries, pretty much whatever it is that you are doing, right? First of all, I think Dr. Daniel and Meryl, they kind of touched on integrity, character. It's very important, right? Many people, they're given an opportunity, and within the first month or the 2 months of getting their foot in the door, they start acting in a manner that questions the relationship. When Mr. Smith was looking for someone to buy his firm, I had worked with him for about 2-3 years at the point. If there were any issues with my character integrity, that conversation wouldn't have happened in the first place. So integrity is very crucial, especially when you are a person of color and you are burdened by a lot of disadvantages just because of the way you look, just because of the way you sound, or because of where you come from, or your heritage and all whatnot. You don't want to add more to the burdens. You don't want to add more to the barriers. You don't want to add more to the disadvantages. You want to make sure that if you can't just be impeccable, you also have to appear impeccable, right? Integrity is everything. Secondly, resilience. For me, I told myself coming to this country that law is all that I've got. There's nothing else. I wouldn't be good with numbers. I wouldn't be good as an accountant. I wouldn't be good in other places. I was very focused. I knew what I wanted. I knew that this was it. Warren Buffett said, there's nothing wrong with having all your eggs in one basket, provided that you're focused on that basket. Don't keep your eye out of that basket, right? Sure. Law was it for me, right? And I had to make it happen, right? So focus is very important. You need to have a certainty of goal. You need to have certainty of purpose. What exactly is it that you want out of profession or out of your life? Thirdly, I think Dr. Daniel mentioned this at the very beginning, learn the industry, right? For you to stand out, you have to learn your craft. You have to invest in your craft. You have to focus on learning and adding value to people's life or whatever it is that you're doing. And I learned this very quickly in my career. I realized that the one thing that's going to give me a competitive advantage over, my colleagues, who were born here, Caucasians or whatever it is, the one thing that's going to give me an advantage over them is knowledge, excellence, value, right? And I spend time honing that accent. It may not matter to them anymore if Charles did not go to school here. It may not matter to them anymore if Charles is an immigrant, right? Because I'm able to add value to their life. So learning your craft, learning to focus on what really matters, which is adding value to people's lives. To me, those are the antidotes to discrimination and racism and all of that. And finally, having a tribe of supporters. I've talked about building influence and helping people along your journey. It's also important to have 1, 2, 3, or 4 people that believe in you more than you believe in yourself. Have them around you, because there'll be moments where there will be moments where you doubt yourself. There will be moments you ask yourself, am I really doing the right thing? People will throw stones at you. You pick up the call and call one of those people that have always been there, people that see what you don't see in you. If you have those people around you, challenges will come, but they will simply be what they are, challenges, because you're able to congregate with them, you're able to talk to them, and they'll tell you that, look, Charles, you're still a star. Regardless of what's going on around you, this is going to come and go. So having that, that tribal support is also very important, especially in a country like Canada, where growing back in Nigeria, I never knew I was black until I came here, right? My blackness, my blackness was thrown at me.
It wasn't there. It was not everybody looked like me. It was, and no, you're right.
Yeah.
So, but thank you. Hey, thank you for sharing that. And Charles, you summed that up very nicely. And I'd just like to give the opportunity to our other panelists, Dr. Daniel and Meryl, just if you could please just provide some final thoughts as well on, the future is now and how can we accomplish that? Some final thoughts would be appreciated. We'll start with Dr. Daniel.
Okay. I was like, ooh, all of a sudden I'm spotlighted. Yeah, so I think final thoughts. I think every one of us has seen how suddenly, regardless of what profession you're in, thanks to social media and as I said, the unfortunate death of George Floyd last year, that pretty much was a tipping point for this movement. I think many of our colleagues in our different professions have suddenly realized that they're surrounded by all of this Black excellence, whether it's in law or medicine or engineering. And so I think for us now, this is a prime opportunity to just grab the opportunity and to demonstrate that not only are we excellent, we're actually outstanding. And, many of us have said we've had to work twice as hard to be considered half as good, which, because I love math, means that we're 4 times better. So, let's just demonstrate that we really are 4 times better. And and don't forget to clear the path for others behind you. This is not about you, the individual. This is about you and giving back to society and making this world in general a much better place where everyone gets to reach their full potential and thrive, because collectively the work then becomes so much less for each of us individually if we do that. Okay, that's it for me.
Well said. I think I would echo on that. Be hopeful is the big thing that I would like to say is, especially for those of you who are immigrants, you are in a much better position right now than many of us who have come before. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of support. So take advantage of that. Continue to be excellent. But continue to, make paths for everyone else, as Dr. Daniels mentioned. Canada is changing. Canada is growing. I think we're realizing the beauty of this country. We have a lot more supports than we did back home, or even compared to the US. I know Canada has a lot of brain drain that goes to the US because, everybody thinks America is better because they've marketed themselves that way. And I think, over the last couple of years, we've gotten to see the reality of that what's behind the great marketing. So know that you're in a country that has a lot of opportunity, but it's up to you to really take advantage of that and fulfill your potential, whatever that may look like, whether it's in a traditional field or starting your own business or whatever that looks like. But regardless of how difficult things are, stay positive. Things are getting better year over year. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Julian, you're on mute.
Yes, I need a sign, you're on mute. Believe me, this challenge has been plaguing me this entire pandemic situation. But thank you to our panelists for sharing your thoughts with us today, for sharing your experience. And again, one of the key things about our panel discussion today is that we really are here to celebrate you. We really are here to acknowledge that as well, and the roads and the paths that you have opened up for other Black professionals. So thank you. And I'm going to turn over to Toyin for any closing remarks. But from me, thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Dr. Daniel, the first time I saw your interview was, I think, Faith Ogunkoya interviewed you, and I watched it till the very end, and I was wowed. I said, no, I need to connect to this woman. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation, to be a panelist at our Black History Month event. Thank you. Charles Osuji. I heard about Charles when I first landed in Canada in 2018. I think there was this buzz about him, taking over the Smith law firm. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. So those are the stories we hear very often that gives us the courage, to keep going, to keep driving, to keep, you guys have put everything out there for us to, come after you. Mario, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really glad and honored, that you are part of us today. I got connected with you by Pamela. I think she's your colleague as well. Thank you so much for, sharing with us from your experience, wealth of experience and knowledge. Some of the takeaway that I have here is learn your crafts and your industry. We need to keep networking, have a mentor, also volunteer and take actions. Dr. Daniel also said, demonstrate excellence, be outstanding, be 4 times better. We should also try to clear the path for others. We should be hopeful. Lots of opportunities are out there for us. We should be excellent and stay positive. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you would have the opportunity to join us at our International Women's Day event on March 13. And the theme for that is creating a gender-inclusive workplace. Thank you so much, Shola and Julian, for moderating this event excellently. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.